In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the rear calipers on this Ram 2500. Let's install these TRQ calipers. The original wheels are no longer on this truck, so I have to do a little bit of a different setup here to remove the wheel. I have a center cap that has to come off and then a different size for the lug nuts. However, whatever you have for lug nuts holding the wheel on, remove them all. Remove the wheel. Now let's break free the banjo bolt. Mine is an 11mm. Typically they're 15mm in size. So I'm just going to use my wrench, break this free and snug it up. Just enough for the fluid not to leak, but it's also going to make it a lot easier to take this off once the caliper is dismounted and not held on anymore. From the backside, remove the two 14mm bolts that hold this caliper onto the bracket. At this point, you should be able to remove the caliper. You can use a little pry bar or screwdriver and stick it in here. Squeeze the pistons in just a little. That'll give you more wiggle room. Now you can easily slide it out, and I'm gonna lift it and put it right up here. That way it doesn't pull on this brake hose. Now remove the pads. If they're stuck, you can use a screwdriver or whatever you have that will help you pry them out. Mine aren't really stuck, so there they are. Now we're going to use a 21mm socket and remove the two bolts that hold the caliper bracket onto the axle. This one up here can be a little trickier to get to. Once broken free, you should be able to remove it by hand. However, don't take it out all the way. Break free and remove the lower one first. Now remove them both and remove the caliper bracket from the vehicle. Now let's prepare the new caliper bracket for installation. Put some grease on the areas where the anti-rattle clips will go. This will prevent them from getting rusty and pushing the clips up and therefore binding up your pads. Put a thin layer on and make sure that whatever you're using is rated for high temperatures, so either brake grease or brake rated silicone paste. That's what I'm using here. Once again, just a thin layer on both sides, top and bottom. Once you've done that, install the anti-rattle clips. They have a larger hook and a smaller hook. The smaller hook goes towards the inside of the bracket and the larger hook hooks onto the outside and snaps them in. Do this to all four. Next, I like to add some grease to the slider pins. I know it comes with some, but I like to add extra, so pull the slider pin out, add some to the inside of the boot, use that same grease that you just used earlier, and then put a little bit extra on the slider pin itself. Slide the pin back in, work it around, and as you can see, there is a little bit of air trapped in there, so push the pin in, squeeze the boot, and that should release the excess air that is in there. Now put the bracket over the axle here and line up the bolts, start them in. Once one is started, you can let go and start in the second one. Bottom these out and torque them to 190 foot-pounds. Now install the pads. Make sure that the top and bottom hooks go over the anti-rattle clips. They act as little springs basically to push the pads off of the rotor when you're not on the brakes. Take your caliper, slide it over the pads and over the bracket. Start in one of the bolts, that way you can let go of it and start in the second one. Bottom these out. The torque for these is 24 foot-pounds. There we go. I'm going to remove the boot off of the bleeder screw, and I like to open it before I put the hose on. That way, as soon as the hose gets connected, the gravity bleed can start. Remove the banjo bolt off of the old caliper. Sometimes the old washers like to stick on here. Grab some pliers and pinch them to remove them. Grab a rag and wipe off the end of the hose here to inspect it, make sure it's good, which it is. So take the hose with a new banjo bolt, slide that bolt through with a washer already on it, then another washer, basically sandwich the hose in between the two, and then line it up and thread it on the caliper side. Snug it up. The torque for this is 20 foot-pounds. That's it right there. You're just trying to squish the two washers to make a nice tight seal. Now we have to wait for the gravity bleed to be done, so fluid should come out of here. Gravity will push it in into the caliper and push the air out. Once the gravity bleed is done, you can perform a full manual brake bleed, but this comes first. There we go, we have a steady trickle of fluid, so at this point we can close this off and perform our full manual brake bleed. To begin your manual brake bleed, make sure that your brake master cylinder is topped off with clean fluid. Then you're going to want to have a second person in the car pumping up the brake pedal as you open and close the bleeder screw. So after a few pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal and open up the bleeder screw. At this point, air and fluid will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close off the bleeder screw and have them pump up the brakes again. After 2 to 3 pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal once again and open up the bleeder screw. Repeat this procedure until no more air comes out of the caliper and you have only clean fluid. Once you get to that point, close off the bleeder screw and top off the master cylinder with clean fluid to make sure it's full. Once everything is done bleeding, clean it off with brake parts cleaner in order to remove any residue that is here so that you don't confuse it for a potential leak. Don't forget to cap off the bleeder screw. And let's put the wheel on. Let's get the wheels back on. Start on all 8 of your lug nuts, bottom them out in a cross pattern, and then torque them to 130 foot-pounds also in a cross pattern. $130 in a cross pattern, here we go. Double check them if you want. In my case, I have to put back the center cap. There you have it, job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.